Stroops. I want to call the meeting to order. Do we need a roll call? No, okay. We're going to start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2.2, welcome and introductions. Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're here tonight, and we'll start with Dr. Gilman.
Randy Gilman, Assistant Superintendent, Elementary.
Tammy Cardona, Assistant Superintendent, Secondary.
April Meckel, Board Member.
Jim Shalhoub, Board Member.
Susan Graham, Board Secretary.
John Stewart, Chief Financial Officer.
Kelly Brock, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources.
Vicki Hansen, Board Member.
Michelle Chamberlain, Board Member.
Crystal Hargis, Vice President.
Paul Frigo, Superintendent.
Judy Smith, Board President, and Dr. Frigo has, oh, okay, hang on just a minute. Give us a second on our technology. Here she is. Carol, can you hear us now? The owl might still be on. She's on.
Well, she's still in the other room.
She didn't walk this way. Can you hear us now, Carol?
Somebody else, is that her?
Can
is
we
that
turn
her
that off?
background?
Disconnect this from the JP. Oh.
From her house.
Well, are you ready for tomorrow? I guess tomorrow's going to be a bad day.
Can she go ahead and just raise her hand to vote?
Mm-hmm. Maybe she should log off and log back on.
Yeah, see if that works.
Just tell her to go ahead and log off and log back on. Carol, can you hear us now? Can you hear us, Carol? Can you hear us? Carol, we can see you, but we don't hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, you're right.
I know. But I think she would be able to.
Because we're not talking.
Yeah, but I've been talking to her. Your mic has to be on for her to hear
Probably
you,
have to
but,
be on for her to hear, I'm sure.
and we're sure the owl is off.
We're not even connected to it.
Dr. Frigo,
Can we
you
go
just
ahead?
FaceTime her on a phone? That would count because she could hear and see. Yeah, I got a phone, FaceTime. And then you have the. That's why we could FaceTime. We could FaceTime. We could do it. How many times we do that?
Don't go. Carol, can you hear us?
Well, she'd have to reconnect.
Oh, so what,
The only other thing to do would be to FaceTime. That would work. don't we do that? It might be simpler. Carol, tell her name. Oh, she doesn't have an iPhone. Okay, never mind. Oh, well. All right, we might as well go in. Maybe we should go ahead and she can join us when she can. We should. Let's go ahead and go ahead. Well, we can do patron comments. We can do.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on for right now.
Before we go to public comment, I'd just like to ask everybody, before we go to public comment, I'd like to have everybody to participate in a moment of silence for Jason Stroops, a teacher we lost at Fox High School. So please bow your head and give a moment of silence. Thank you very much.
Okay, 2.3, approval of the agenda for July 11th, 2022. I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? 2.4, approval of the meeting minutes from December 14th, 2021. I need a motion.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 2.5, approval of the meeting minutes from December 28th, 2021. I need a motion.
Second, Chamberlain.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay. 3.1, patron comments. Dr. Gilman.
Yes, we have two comments this evening. Ariel Laird is the first one, and as she's making her way to the mic, I want to remind everybody that you have a 3-minute time period. A warning will be given after 2.5 minutes. The Vice President of the Board will be the timekeeper.
Hello, Board. Thank you for allowing me the time to talk with you today. My name is Ariel Laird, and I am a sophomore and straight-A student at Seckman High School. I am here to talk with you today because I have some major concerns regarding the current COVID policies. First and foremost, I would like to respectfully remind you that it is not your job to make choices for our bodies regarding the masks. That is and should always be 100% our parents and our own. Secondly, I have concerns as to how the faculty in my building specifically are handling the mandate. When I got to school this morning, I did not have a mask on and did not plan to wear one, as according to the Attorney General, it is in fact against the law for your school board to set up any such mandates. Upon walking into school, I was almost immediately and aggressively told that I had to put a mask on. I respectfully declined, and when I did, I was practically shouted at to go to the office, which I did.
Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Carol, can you hear us? Can she hear us? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When I got to the office, I was told to take a seat and wait for a principal to speak to me. I waited all the way until the tardy bell rang, at which time I felt I was forced to have to wear the mask because it is finals week and I cannot afford to miss any of my classes. All that being said, I truly had been made to feel like I had done something wrong, which I think is absurd considering I have always been a rule follower and respectful to teachers and staff alike. Additionally, I would like to remind you that there have been many studies that state that the simple cloth masks do not do a thing. I recognize that in a previous board meeting I attended, it was stated that masks do not affect the mental health of students, and as a student myself, I disagree. Masks may seem like a simple thing, but not when they mentally and physically harm you. During the last school year, when I was required to wear a mask daily, I would get horrible headaches that made it almost impossible for me to focus. Also, the masks make my face itchy, and they give me a sense that nobody really cares who I am, except that a student who brings funding to the schools. With the masks, we believe we start to lose our identity and our self-confidence. I would like to read a quote to you from an official notice sent from the Attorney General Eric Schmidt to all Missouri public school districts on December 7th of 2021, and I quote, "State law does not delegate authority to school officials to issue mask mandates, quarantine orders, or other public health orders. Your school district should stop enforcing and publicizing any such orders immediately." End quote. Board, your decisions make a big impact in our lives, so I ask that you please reconsider completely removing the mandate for the well-being of myself and all other students. Thank you.
Dan McCarthy.
Good evening. So I had 3 issues I wanted to discuss, and I'm going to try to keep it short. One is comments. I wanted to make a comment about our comment policy, and that I think it should restrict just what's on our current agenda, and it should be able to question previous meeting votes and discussions. And I believe that by having it set up the way it is, you're just silencing and censoring the public. All right, and then secondly, I wanted just to bring up this sales order quote on the Math Learning Center, and that I looked it over, and I wanted the board to make sure they look at these items, because you can buy these items individually on Amazon for the same price, if not less. And then looking at what you're going to pay for shipping of almost $20,000 to ship these items, I think we really need to look at that. I think you'd probably cut off about $40,000. It just seems ridiculous, this quote here. I looked over all your other quotes, and they look pretty decent. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys do due diligence and look at the pricing on those. And then I want to talk about COVID, so the COVID mitigation. And I want to kind of discuss where we are today and make sure we don't forget what we've been through in the last 2 years. You know, the Board of Education is elected to represent us, and so far the folks for parents' rights and to wear masks and the right on vaccines and the right of choice on quarantine only the sick, been pretty much right all along. Even the CDC recently stated that more than 75% of deaths occurred in individuals with at least 4 comorbidities. This is just common sense. And then if you look back at Kelly Vollmer's statement to the leader that we must protect our most vulnerable 2 to 19 years of age, and she did this a week before school was to start, which, looking back at it, was a straight-up lie. The board, and then going back to like the surveys, the board didn't want to do a survey. Why didn't they not want to do a survey? Well, I mean, it's obvious. If you would have done a survey, you already knew what you were going to do, and it looks pretty bad if you give a survey and you do the opposite, because you already had your mind made up. Going back to, like, right now, there's some parents getting very involved, but they're doing the work that the board should be doing. You know, you guys should understand what's going on beneath you and holding people accountable. There's a lot going on with policies and things that are legal matters that you guys are responsible for that. I'm seeing parents getting involved to the level that they know more what's going on, and it's your responsibility. That's what you guys are elected to do. So I'd like to see some changes, and it's not too late. So thank you.
3.2, Superintendent Comments. Dr. Frigo?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. Before I get into my report, I'd like to recognize some individuals. You may or may not have realized that registering to run for the school board closed on December 28th, and we've had 10 citizens step up to offer their candidacy for the school board. So I'd like to mention them, and if you're here, stand up so people can put a face with a name. Kenneth Woolsey, so we're going to run for a 3-year term. Todd Scott for a 3-year term. Brandon Williams. Kathy Michalski. Curtis Frazier. Tara Hagan. Okay, those are all 3-year terms. And then for 1-year term, we have Travis Littner. Vicki Hansen. David Knoll. And Ryan Giesler. Yes, thank you. Thanks for clapping for them. It's quite a public service, and we appreciate your willingness to serve the kids of our school district. So thank you. All right, so we'll get started on my update for this board meeting. We've been communicating out to our patrons the 2% COVID positivity rate, and these are the buildings currently that have that. We have Antonia Elementary and Middle, Fox Middle, Guffey, Hodge, Rockport Heights, Seckman Elementary, Seckman High, and Sherwood Elementary. We're seeing some high positivity rates in those buildings, and masks will be currently required there. Let me hold on here. Some things I want to talk about in regards to that. Some people have been asking about going virtual, a shift to 100% remote, and are there thresholds, and what's our guidance there? There was some thoughts out there that we have a 5% threshold. There's no threshold to that. What we're looking at is a lot of factors. One would be the positivity rate, but we're also looking at, for example, absentee rates of our staff and our ability to fill subs. So currently, we've been tracking that since the beginning of the year. Our daily absence rates is around 7%, and our substitute fill rate is around 76%. And so that's been a little lower in the last couple weeks, but that's another factor we'd look at if we would end up going virtual at some point. So I just wanted to get some of the correct information out there in regards to that question that we've seen on social media as well as some emails. Okay, next slide, sir. Last week, I was fortunate enough to participate in a meeting with a doctor from Washington University who's an expert on COVID. And also, we were able to get some information from an infectious disease doctors from the region last week as well. Both of those folks said there will be a peak in our cases in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So that's either this week or next week from that meeting we had. The other thing I want to point out is people monitor our COVID dashboard very closely, and we appreciate that. At the end of this week is the end of the semester, and we will be adjusting the staff student counts at each of the buildings based on the reboot for the second semester. So if you see those numbers change a little bit, that's why, and then we'll hold those numbers steady for the second semester, and that's what we'll use for the 2% rate. But I know a lot of people watch it, and I want to make sure you understand why those staff student population numbers will be changing here in the next week. Also, I want to remind everybody we have the second clinic we had to cancel last week due to the weather. Second clinic for 5 to 11-year-olds to get their second dose, and that's Thursday, the 13th, over at the Rickman. All right, next one. We have nominations open for Teacher of the Year. These windows close Friday. If you'd like to nominate a teacher who's made a difference in your kid's life, we appreciate that, and it's on our district website. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of people nominated for this wonderful recognition. Another new award we've developed this year is Support Staff of the Year. Same approach, one award given to each building and department group throughout the district. Recognize our support staff. This is an expansion of our recognition that we haven't done before. Same time frame, the nomination window closes on Friday. We look forward to you guys nominating that bus driver, custodian, secretary, whoever it may be, food service worker that's making a difference in your kid's life and having a positive impact. So please go to our website and nominate those people doing great work for our kids.
Okay, 4.1, COVID mitigation plan. Dr. Frigo.
You have a update of the COVID mitigation plan there for your review. I'll note the primary change is on page 3, where we aligned with the updated recommendation on exclusion from school, where it says you would be 5 days from the onset of symptoms or 5 days from a positive COVID-19 test. You can come to school after 5 days if you've been asymptomatic or fever-free for 24 hours. So that's adjustment. It's reducing the time someone's excluded from school. And then upon your return, we're strongly encouraging you to wear a mask for 5 days after you return to school from a lab-confirmed positive test or COVID-like symptoms. So that's the recommended adjustment to the plan for the board to consider.
Okay, do we have any discussion on that?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on it. It says the close contact received a lab-confirmed positive COVID test. I know that we had some brief discussion about home test, and then I actually spoke to a couple of medical experts on the home test. The home test typically will not throw a false positive, and they said to think about it like it will throw a false negative. They can do that if you test too early, because it's looking for a specific load, a viral load. And so I would like to see that we would accept the positive home test, because I think we're having parents that are testing at home, and then they report it, and it doesn't go on our dashboard, and then our results are not showing exact or close to what numbers we actually have. I also know that there's a cost for them to go to a pharmacy to have a test done, and that can be very expensive for some of our families. I think that they can recoup that amount if they apply through their insurance, but if it's out of pocket, it's expensive to do that for some of our families, where at-home test is no cost to them, from what I understand. So,
can I get some clarification on that?
Sure.
So you're saying if a parent does a home test and their child tests positive and they disclose that to the school district,
Yes.
we don't count that as?
No, we count that.
We do count that.
We don't count it currently, but we do.
We don't count.
Right.
Okay, but right now, we haven't been counting that.
No.
Absolutely not, no.
Is there a particular reason why we haven't been counting that?
Well, I have a question about that, because what if people say, my child tested positive, and they really didn't? And there's nobody to verify that was a positive case.
Why would they do that?
Right.
To make the count go up on the dashboard.
But they also would be excluding their kid from school by doing that.
And that's another reason why they would do it, to get their kid out
Yeah.
of school, to have an excused absence.
I think that's
The
individual.
guidance we
then.
received is they're not as, you guys asked, it's not as reliable. Unless they're we talked about trying to proctor home tests with people through video somehow, because those seem to be the most valid. But the reliability, the information we have may be different from Vice President Hart's, is stick with the lab confirmed positives. But if the board wants to do something different, that's absolutely your right.
I think it could really be skewed by people saying, I have a home test positive.
But
Well,
isn't
but-
it being skewed right now? If they're calling in and they're saying, I tested my
Well,
child and they came out positive,
One thing,
and they really
one
are?
thing is we have a policy in place that if a school becomes 2% positive, which is really, how many students at a school?
Depends on the school.
Okay, we'll
Be
just pick a school.
500 kids.
Well, pick an elementary school. I don't know, just tell
400.
me, just give me a school.
It's
in
8 kids.
Pardon me?
8
400
kids.
would be 8 kids, 2%.
400.
Okay, so you're talking about 8 kids out of 400, okay? So we have a policy in place that if 8 kids out of 400 test positive, then the building goes mask mandate. So we now have buildings going mask mandate with a small amount of positive cases. And so if people are going out and getting positive confirmed cases, it may be skewed because people aren't getting them in the appropriate time, maybe. There may be 2 or 3 days in there, but the positive cases are coming in. And I mean, if you've got, a few kids per 400, as that goes up, the building's gonna go to mask. And it's not going to really change anything if you accept the positive, other than people saying, my child's sick, I'm gonna say they've got a positive case, they're gonna stay home, and it's gonna cause the dashboard to go up. I understand that it's not timely right now, but I also understand that these doctors are saying, around the world, this has peaked and it's falling rapidly, and that they're expecting it to peak here very soon. And with our schools, we already have several schools going mask mandate following our policy. And if we just go ahead and follow our policy, if those numbers go up, then we're gonna mask those buildings.
But in the meantime, the numbers, if they go up higher, we're putting a lot of people at risk, including our staff. It's our students and our staff that we need to be concerned about. And I think I recall we got one email. We got one email from a person who, and I thought this was a very good analogy, who said that, we call snow days to keep our kids safe. And some people may be able to get to the bus stop safely. Some people may be able to transport their kids, but we call snow days to keep all of our students safe.
Well,
And
it's
I
a
think-
liability for our bus drivers also.
Well, it's putting, I guess the thing that I think that we should consider is the safety of all the people that are in our buildings. And right now it is peaking, and the new variant is transmitted very easily. And to me, it's a little ironic that, the fact is, if we can't staff our buildings, what kind of
Right.
quality education are we providing anyway? If we're doubling up classes or putting kids in a library, whatever we have to do to keep school open, what is the quality of the instruction that we're providing? So it really seems to me that it's our responsibility to do something during this peak time to prevent the spread until it gets to, and at that, it's,
Please don't interrupt.
I'm just.
Please don't interrupt. Please don't interrupt.
And so my thought is, we're, as a board, we've been committed to reviewing our mitigation plan every 30 days, and we can continue to do that. So it's a responsive plan. That's the point of reviewing it. And right now, it's surging. And I'm just thinking it's something for us to consider. We've got several buildings that are at 2%. The kids go between the buildings, parents go between the buildings, and, it's quite a bit. For example, here in Arnold, Walmart was closed for a day for deep cleaning, and I know that I've gone to Walmart early in the morning, and they can't staff the building. They don't open at 6 anymore because they don't have enough staff. So we need to be cognizant of that as well. If the goal is to have in-school instruction, at a certain point, we're concerned about the students, but we also need to be concerned about the adults that are in those buildings. And
Well, have
it's
you
a
got
little bit disconcerting to me. I'm just going to speak personally. I think that we would be hard pressed to find a lot of individuals that don't have some kind of pre-existing condition that may exacerbate what happens to them. And that's something we don't need to dismiss. I mean, a lot of people have issues, and to dismiss what happens to somebody because they happen to have a pre-existing condition, I mean,
Well, I'm not
it doesn't
wanting
matter
to
to me.
dismiss any of this. What is your solution other than allowing people to call in and say, I have a positive
Well,
case in my
I'm
home?
just asking for discussion. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just.
Well, that's what I want to know. I mean, what else can we do besides allowing people to call in and just say, I have a positive case, when they may not?
Well, we could ask for proof of that, even if it's an in-home
Yeah,
test.
is
how do
there
you
any
do
way that we could ask them, that we could verify that by having them drive by the school and doing a home test?
I don't know. I'm just asking if there's a way
I don't
to
know.
be verified.
That's what, I don't know.
That part, maybe.
Let me just say
That
this.
part, maybe we could think of a way to do it, but the rest of it, we still need to decide.
Let me say this. I think if we have a parent that calls up and they say their kid is positive, and no one in that classroom that kid is in is made aware of that, to me, that is absolutely terrible. I want to know if there's a kid in my kid's class that has tested positive and that has not been disclosed to me, I'm going to be very upset about that.
Well,
And so
if
is there
they're-
any way that we can verify that? Folks, we gave you your opportunity to speak. We didn't interrupt you. I think the day of rude behavior in our crowd here is really come to an end.
You may leave the room if you say one more thing.
Dr. Forgo, what do you want to do?
Well, our recommendation is lab-confirmed tests, because all the issues you guys have raised is how do you manage that to verify it?
Have the nurses weighed in on that too?
Yes, they're very difficult to do. One thing we talked about was the video verification, but
So we're
We'd have
trusting the parents, if they get a home positive test, to go to, I mean, they're going to keep their child home if they're an honest
but
person.
there's
If-
also the opportunity for them to say it's negative, and we don't know if it was truly negative.
Right.
I mean, it's both sides of that.
So if they have a child with a positive case and they call in and say, I have a home test, tested positive, I'm going to make an appointment and I'm going to get a test, then it may take them 2 days, but they're keeping that child home. And so it may be, I don't know what else we can do, because if we start saying we're going to accept things that aren't verified and validated, I mean,
So can I ask a question? Are we hung up on the fact that this goes into the date of the 2% and the masks come on? So that's the issue here, that people are so concerned that this number can go with masks to institute the masks come on. Why don't we just say, if you look in our schools right now, I know my school, it's crazy high. I can't believe every school in the Fox District does not have 2%. Because the reason that they're not at 2% is a delay in testing. Right now, you can't even get into like urgent care. Total access, you have to call it like 5 till 6 in the morning. People are waking up. It's very, very, very difficult. And I did mention on our last Zoom board meeting about the proctoring of the test, and that's what I used when my family went out of the country, and it worked. We had somebody proctor it. We all came back negative, but that's something that could be done, that if we needed.
Is that how you started it? Did you have a home test and then you
Yeah, you had-
zoomed in with this company?
Right.
And they told you how to proctor it?
Right. It's not cheap at all, but
Okay, well,
and I understand that,
That's another
but
barrier.
that's another alternative. If a parent wants to do it that way. I'm not saying that everyone has to do it, but we do need to make sure that we're trusting these parents and these children who are sick at home, and if you call in and say, I've tested positive for COVID,
So whether it's the difference in, they find out with a home test, they make an appointment, it may take 2 days, they're not sending their child to school, so it may take 2 days to get it on the dashboard, but the child isn't at school. And then, I mean, you're talking about a difference of a few children before it finally makes it to 2%, which really isn't a whole lot of students, and the school's mask.
But that 2 days, Judy, that one individual
Right.
child,
But they're at home now.
they're at home, but still yet, that could affect that dashboard number. And that
Right,
school.
and within 2 days, it's going to be on the dashboard. And that child will not be at
But
school.
in 2
for-
days, that number may fall down and it won't.
So that, in 2 days, that's right. So they're coming on and going off daily. So it's got to reach that 2%, whether it's coming off or going on daily, it's still going to reach that 2% if it's really going up above 2%. It may take a couple days, but those kids are going to be at home if their parents know they're sick.
So you're just
Maybe-
kicking the ball down the road.
No, no.
The most critical thing I'm thinking right now, instead of debating about the lab test or the other, is just the sheer number across the district of cases we have and the surge that is being documented throughout Jefferson County and St. Louis County and just this area. And we have, statistically, Jefferson County is higher than a lot of other areas. And so I would think, rather than debating about lab tests and versus in-home tests, that the board might want to consider mandating masks till the next board meeting so that we can stop the surge and really protect the students and all our staff. Because I think the issues related to COVID are significant, and I really think we don't need to minimize how much we could put people at risk. And that's the biggest consideration, is getting through the surge. And then, if we look at what to do when we come back February 1st, if the numbers have gone down, then, we can consider going with masks recommended and not required. But right now, it's surging. Dr. Forgo just presented to us how many buildings right now?
10.
10 buildings.
10 out of our 18 buildings are at the 2%, and we have staff who are out. We are having our usual sub rate before COVID came was 95 to 96%, and we wanted it to be better then. And if we are only filling 75% of the classrooms, we're not able to provide quality instruction to our students.
Right.
And the goal is to keep kids in school. And I'll be honest, if it takes wearing masks to keep kids in school and keep people from being sick so they can learn, then for a brief period of time, we can still do what we did before. We don't have to be the mask police. People can take breaks from masks. Staff, if they use common sense, it can be done. And if that saves people from getting sick, deathly ill, and in being in intensive care and dying, then I think that we have a responsibility to do that. It's not like it's a great long period of time.
Well, I was down at Peevely today delivering, and I took my mask because Peevely, or whatever, Dunklin they had gone before Christmas to a mask mandate. So I took my mask with me today, and when I got down there, they came back to school without a mask. And so what are the districts around us doing? Have they gone with this, and it's not just our county. I just got back from Louisiana. It's all over. And most of them are like, it's like a cold. And as I listen to the people today on the radio and things, they're saying that even the vaccine's not working on the latest Omicron, that it's not working for that. And so
We just had a staff member die, Judy.
I realize that. I do realize that.
Well, if the vaccine is not working, that's even more of a reason for us to do whatever we can to mitigate the
Right.
transmission of this disease.
I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, wait, I have one more question, please. Dr. Forgo, what do you think about masking?
If we're going to go to masking, I'm hearing the discussion here. My recommendation would be, based on my conversation with the doctor from Washington University, and the information we received from the infectious disease doctors about the peak being this week and next. And they're two different meetings, same information, that if we mask, we go through the 21st, which gets us through the peak. From that's this week and 4 days next week. That would be my recommendation.
I could understand that.
Wouldn't it be safer to go through to the next board meeting when we consider it anyway, just to give some insurance of protecting people? It's not that much longer, it's one more week.
But then you have, so let's say we do through the 21st, but then you still have the 2% in place per building as a fallback. So if, you get to the 21st and that building still is over 2%, then they don't take their mask off. In August, I mentioned something about having a district-wide 1%. Each building is 2%, and then district-wide it's 1%. But that, again, I'm not an expert. You've spoken to the experts. Your cabinet I like your cabinet's recommendation, so I'm willing to support that.
Okay, well, do you want to make that a motion?
Sure. I make a motion to follow what Dr. Forgo has said regarding masking through the 21st and then going back to mask optional per building at 2%.
What about the return after 5 days with a recommendation of masks?
So I did read that. Why don't we just say what the CDC says there and say that they have to wear a mask? Will it be monitored and policed appropriately? Probably not, but just to say recommended or required, just say that you have to wear a mask for 5 days to come back.
I would support that. That makes sense to me.
So I want to make sure I understand your motion. You want to modify the mitigation plan presented to include masking through the 21st.
Sure.
Okay. And are we including a mask requirement for those coming back off positive tests or symptoms
Yes.
for 5 days after?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying, April?
Yes. Because teachers want to come back because they want to be in their classroom. But if you have symptoms, then you end up staying home longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not forcing staff to
Right.
come back. Absolutely not. We've got some emails about that, and that's the last thing we want, just a
Well,
healthy
we've got
staff.
emails begging to change this so they can come back.
Exactly.
They're
Healthy
wanting to be
staff,
in school.
we want back.
Okay, are you clear?
I want to make sure. I want to make sure we have a lot of things thrown out here. So we're going to modify the plan to mask through the 21st, required in all buildings. We'll return to the 2% threshold after that. We're going to require masks of people that have had positive tests or were symptomatic for 5 days upon their return.
I wouldn't even put the word required. I would just say wear the mask for 5 days. The people are so hung up on required and recommended. I wouldn't put that in there.
Just say are to wear a mask.
There you go.
Okay. Now, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but where did we land on these, the
I think it
tests?
still needs to be lab confirmed.
I do too.
Since we're gonna be putting masks on everyone
Right,
anyway,
right.
it really,
Well, and
Okay.
also, we would have to differentiate with the 5 days payback of teachers, or is it just for students? So that would open up a whole nother can of worms there.
Did you get all that, JP? Can we start this Thursday, give us a chance to recalibrate all this with
Is that
everybody?
okay, Thursday? Do you think they can notify people tonight?
Okay, could I say something, Vicki? Judy?
Yes, ma'am.
We're only talking about 10 days. Is that enough time to see if
Yes.
if this is going to escalate or de-escalate? 10
Well,
days
they're
is not very
saying that it's
long
going to de-escalate this week or next week.
Pardon me?
And the 2% will still be in play. So if a building has 2% positivity, they will still be masked at the end of next week.
But we're talking about masking for 10 days only to see, and so I realize that if you're 2%, they're gonna have to continue to wear a mask. But what about the buildings that aren't 10%? Is 10 days enough time for us to see a change in the transmission of the COVID? I'm not, 10 days is not very long. You can be sick 2 of those 10 days and not even realize it until you get tested.
Just so we're,
To me, the time frame is not quite long enough.
just so we're
Just my
clear,
opinion.
currently, Seckman High, Hodge Elementary, Seckman Elementary, Rockford Heights, Sherwood, Antonia, and Guffey would all go past the 21st. They would go to the 24th or 25th, depending on when they started. So we already have a few schools going past that date. And I want to make sure it's not really even 10 days. If we're allowed to start it Thursday, even if it's tomorrow, we got 2.5 days this week and 4 days next week. That's six and a half
6
school
days.
days.
At school.
At school,
So,
masked.
may I ask another question? Given that that's really only 6 days, I mean, I just don't understand why we couldn't extend it at least till the end of January. That would give more time, and we don't know exactly how it's gonna surge. I just.
If it's still going strong, we can have a meeting. We can call a special meeting if
Well, and
you
it
all
just
feel.
seems so, I mean, it's.
If you
It seems
recall,
so reasonable
when
to
we
just-
masked Fox before Christmas, they stopped surging right away. They put those masks on, those numbers stopped going up. I really think you would see in that amount of time, Carol.
If
Did you
that
ask a
was the
question or
case
just
at
make a
Fox, will we
statement?
put the
I'm
mask
sorry.
on?
You said something
The
about
cases went
Christmas.
down significantly.
I'm so,
I think that going to the end of the month would make a lot of sense, folks. I mean, you know, when this started, I knew a few people in acquaintance that had COVID. Now I have known a few people that don't have it. We have a tsunami of infection taking place in our community. Many universities are taking strong steps to try to mitigate the transmission of this. There's some things that we need to do that are just kind of natural and intelligent, and I think at least for 30 days or to the end of the month before or the next board meeting or whatever it is not too much, especially if we did it at Fox and it went down.
Right, so,
And see, the interesting thing, in the business community, a lot of fast food restaurants are closing their indoor facility because of how quickly it spreads, and they're just doing drive-through or carry-out.
they're closing because of their
they don't
their
have staff.
Well, that's part of it, but they also have staff that are sick. And so it's a safety measure as well. So I just think it's 5 more days, folks, and I'd rather err on the side of caution than take a chance.
I
We
would
have a
rather
board
err on the
meeting
side to support our cabinet and our superintendent.
Come on.
I would.
Stop, it's not about not supporting them.
I am telling you that we keep walking over and trumping him, and we have got to see if he can lead and do this. We have to let him do this. You talk
what
about
it is.
governing all the time to me, Vicki. You are overstepping your bounds.
Okay, please. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have it down?
You have it? Well, I'll review it again. We have a motion to modify the mitigation plan that was presented to include masking required through the 21st, and students and staff members are to wear a mask for 5 days after returning from lab-confirmed positive test or COVID-like symptoms. The strongly encouraged is stricken, and it's just say are to wear. That's the motion, I think. Yes.
I'll second it. Chamberlain?
Okay, all in
Who
favor?
seconded?
Chamberlain.
Chamberlain. All in favor?
Yes.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, I didn't quite get that. I know, Vicki, did you say no? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just asking, I couldn't hear.
Well,
Okay, do you know? Okay, I didn't know if she could tell.
I don't know what Carol voted.
Carol, are you voting?
No, I said no.
Okay. Maybe
that
it
was the other no.
That was what I heard.
Okay. So we have 5 in favor and 2 opposed. Am I right? Okay.
Okay, moving on to 4.2, first reading of 2022-23 district calendar. Dr. Brock.
Yes, we are asking the board to accept the attached draft of the 22-23 school district calendar for a first reading. We would bring it back in February for a second reading and adoption. So this calendar very closely mirrors what we already have in place for this year and previous years. We did 2 different surveys of staff and parents to get some feedback on different issues, and the feedback from those surveys are attached as well. Overall, the results of those surveys were in line with kind of what we already do, so we didn't make many changes.
Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
In November, they have conferences and then a day off on a Monday and a Tuesday versus the Thursday and Friday, and then the same thing happens in April. Conferences on a Monday and then off on Tuesday. Is that the way people wanted it? They didn't want it on Thursday and Friday?
Well, when you're looking at that issue like in a vacuum by itself, staff definitely prefer to have it Thursday and Friday like we used to have it, right? But when that was in place, we didn't have a priority of having our schools closed on election days.
Okay.
And so the priority of being closed on election days is a higher priority for people than having that on Thursdays and Fridays. And there's just not enough days in the calendar to do both.
Okay. And my other question was October 3rd and February 7th. One's a Monday, one's a Tuesday. They're just random PD days. Are those there for a particular reason? Like one's the 7th of February and it's like a Tuesday.
So there is an election.
Okay.
That day.
All right.
The October 3rd one, we always have one end of September, beginning of October.
Okay. That's what I just wanted to know. All righty, thank you. Any other questions or anything about the calendar? So then this will be voted on in February? Okay. 4.3, memo of understanding with...
Did you accept it as a first reading?
Okay, so we need to accept it as a
Yes.
first reading? Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, so we need a motion to accept it as a first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, 4.3, memo of understanding with Comtree. Dr. Cardona.
So as a district, we have a long-standing relationship with Comtree, and you will see attached an MOU, and I'm asking the board to accept and approve this through Comtree in the Fox C-6 district. They do provide counseling services for our students along with dental care for our students as well, so I'm just asking the board to approve that.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the attached MOU between Comtree and the Fox School District. The memorandum of understanding sets forth the terms and understanding between Comtree and the district for the provisions of behavioral health and oral health services in the school-based health center located in the Fox Service Center in order to service those students and families within the district. I need a motion.
Motion, Yount.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed?
I'd like to comment real quick.
Okay, sure.
Now that you voted. These folks really stepped up to help us when we had Mr. Stroop's pass away, to help augment our current staffing of counselors at Fox High School. they were stepped up right away and helped us have more people available at that building. So I just like to point that out, that it is a good partnership.
Thank you. 4.4 curriculum, math resource adoption. Dr. Gilman.
All right, thank you for giving us some time this evening to talk about a math resource adoption. Dr. Frigo asked me to keep it under 90 minutes. We should be able to do that. I got Robin Green here with me. Robin has been instrumental in this process, and we would not have gotten anywhere without her. So appreciate her, and special thanks to Sherry Benastia and Sarah Helm, a couple teachers that took a leadership role this semester and helped us out with the curriculum writing.
All right. So just to let you know, this process started September of 2020, and we're now at January of 2022. So I want to really thank all the teachers that gave us feedback along the way, the math curriculum team, and then also the pilot teachers that were very involved. The second bullet is just some things that happened along the way. We started with building meetings to talk to teachers about what's important in a math resource. Then we took that information and we're with like the math curriculum writing team. We created criteria that we were going to evaluate the resources against. We had demo codes where all of our teachers were able to get in electronically and view the resources and look at them to provide more feedback, and then we had more surveys, and then we had gallery viewings where we had all of the resources out and teachers could come and look at all of them. We had vendor presentations, we did PD, we sent samples to buildings, and we had additional samples that PLCs and teachers could check out and view. So those are just some of the things that happened along the way. This last fall, it was narrowed down to pilot big ideas and reveal K through 5, and then also number corner K through 3. So it was very data-driven. Every time we were able to make a shift in the process and eliminate some resources, we gathered that data, looked at it with a team of teachers, and then decided how many were going to go to the next round. And then we would do other presentations or ways to get teachers to interact with those resources, and then collect more data, and then get a smaller number. So that's the process until we got to this last fall where we piloted those 3 resources in the buildings.
So to just go over a little bit of data here with you, we had the percentage of pilot teachers providing feedback, 62% for big ideas and 72% for reveal. And then as we go down through these components, these are components from the very beginning with all of the resources that teachers identified as being critical. So for example, the unit design, they scored these on a 4-point scale, and so the percentage you see there represents scores that were 3 or 4 combined. So unit design, favorability, you see big ideas at 75% and reveal at 37%. Lesson design, 85% to 45%. Ease of use, I heard a lot of feedback at reveal was not easy to use. Standards alignment, which is really important, it's really critical, obviously, 81% to 43%. Online instruction and practice, 71% to 29%. Daily cumulative review, you see that one, and manipulatives are a little bit lower on big ideas, 53% and 49%. The daily cumulative review, that's like a spiraling, that's one of the things that Number Corner will help shore up. And then I think the other thing is, teachers being the professionals there, I think they can also come back around and create some spiraling opportunities as well. Guided math supports, number talks, you guys can kind of see the data there. The manipulatives, when we piloted this, manipulatives did not come with the pilot. They don't, because that's a lot of stuff. And so as teachers were looking at the lessons and things, they can see what manipulatives are available, but we actually didn't get hands-on during the pilot. We did get hands-on during the demos and that kind of thing. So these do come with good manipulatives. I think that's probably why that's scored just a little lower there. Mastery of math facts, complex problem solving, and differentiation. you can see that big ideas and all of these key components that they identified scored better than Reveal.
So in December, the beginning of December until the beginning of January, we opened up a feedback window for all educators. It could be pilot teachers, it could be teachers that evaluated the resources, it could be teachers that were able to use some of the resources in class. So even if you weren't a official pilot teacher with the materials, you still had access online to be able to connect and have your students do some of those lessons and try out the materials. So we gathered all of that feedback, and here's the data for you with big ideas. 66.7% said yes to adopt that resource, and then you can see the percentage of teachers that said maybe or no, and then on the right you can see Reveal 22.4% of those teachers that provided feedback said yes, adopt that resource, and you can see the percentage of maybe and no. So we gathered all of that data from the teachers. We also surveyed the parents in October and November, and then we also surveyed students in December. We took all the feedback from the teachers, the parents, and the students, and we provided all of that for the curriculum writing team and had them look at the data and then make their recommendation. So that last point there is that 96% recommend we adopt big ideas based on all of the feedback from all those stakeholders.
Next. All right, so that was it for the big idea and Reveal comparison. Number Corner is a supplemental math program, K through 3. This would be a one-time purchase. There are refill consumables that come to that, but that's a pretty minimal cost. Number Corner is basically a skill building program that revolves around the classroom calendar, provides daily practice and continual encounters with broader mathematical concepts, and it usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes. We had 51% of pilot teachers responded to this. 87% said they use the program daily, 94% said the program is valuable or very valuable, and 97% said the program has helped students with their number sense. The teacher feedback here, 90.3% said that they recommended the adoption, 3.2% said maybe, and 6.5% said no. We had a 100% recommendation from the curriculum writing team on this resource.
So moving forward, if the board chooses to adopt these resources, the next big step is professional development, and we have some opportunities February 8th, April 4th. During the summer, we also offer optional PD for teachers that want to dive in deeper, and then the fall of 2020 would be where we continue PD as we're really starting to use those resources. The teachers will have access to big ideas, if that's adopted, to be able to start using it and play with it this semester in their classroom with their students as well. They wouldn't necessarily have the books, but they would still have that online access, and we would be able to help and support them as they're transitioning. So this was the recommendation based on the data, big ideas. That is a 6-year adoption. Number Corner doesn't expire in 6 years. It's the one-time purchase and then maybe some replacements of some pages, but that is basically a one-time purchase for however long we want to use those materials. So are there questions we can help answer?
I have a question. The implementation of this, is this, everyone's going to start next year? All grade levels?
Correct.
Okay. Is it, how different is it from what you're currently do? Because if it's really different, there's going to be a learning curve and then our scores are going to go down. I know that's something that the board has really talked a lot about the last year and a half.
Yeah, so the ease of use is one of those. I forget exactly what that, let me come back up here. Ease of use, 73%. They thought it was pretty favorable. I don't see like a giant learning curve with this one. A couple of the other resources, like for Reveal, for example, they were having a really hard time trying to find their way around in it. So I think with the PD that Robin's going to provide, I think that it'll be a pretty smooth transition.
And that was one of the reasons we wanted to bring it to the board early, because our next PD day is February 8th, that if this is adopted, we need to take advantage of that.
Also, I mean, I feel like everybody's been well, this year they've been piloting something, but everybody's not doing the same thing. Once this is adopted, everybody's going to be doing the same thing, and so hopefully it'll bring some continuity to all of the elementaries, all of the grade levels as they move through the grades, bring continuity to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Judy. As they work through this program in their PLC, I think that'll just make things better.
I'd just like to make a comment about the process. It sounds like the teachers were deeply involved in this process, and they've done the analysis. Personally, I've had the opportunity to work with Reveal with my second grader, and I'll be very honest with you folks, I don't know if it really helps kids learn much at all. It's very confusing. It's the most complicated thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, one of the comments from the teachers, but they were a little concerned about the Reveal and the kids that were doing Reveal, like get them switched and moving on to something else.
I mean, it was just like, let's make this as complicated as we can. I know they want the kids to construct their understanding of things, but I just think they were beating a dead horse in many, many ways, and it was not good.
Yeah, after the presentations that narrowed it to the final two, I would have predicted that Reveal would have been the thing, because their presentation was amazing, looked like a lot of bells and whistles and things, but teachers found it incredibly difficult to deal with.
Well, and as teachers bring the curriculum in, whether they liked it or they didn't like it, you make it your own and you make it work. And people are just gonna, I mean, there will be an adjustment time, but
I agree with you, Judy. That's one of the fantastic things about elementary teachers, honestly, is they can, they could take a box of junk from your attic and they could have a math lesson, an English lesson, and a science lesson out of it. I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. So you're right.
we've got great teachers.
The professional development, are Big Ideas going to provide professional development?
Yes, so based on the decision here tonight, I've been working with them to make sure they have enough presenters for that February 8th day. And we would be able to have enough presenters to work with the grade levels on that day, all 11 buildings, to make sure everybody gets a good start and then can dabble in it the rest of the semester and then continue to provide optional PD after school or the other April 4th day. And they're very good about just answering questions.
That's what I was wondering, how the
Yes,
company
they've been
interacted.
phenomenal during the pilot.
Okay.
So these are basically two different recommendations. I don't have the amounts there in front of me. We did get permission, correct, Robin Green, to pay for the Big Ideas over 2 different calendar years, which finance was happy about. So, we would just approve it now, but then it would actually come out of two separate budgets on that.
Anybody have any other questions? Okay, we have 2 different motions or 2 different things we need to approve. 4.4 is the curriculum of Big Ideas, so I need a motion to approve the purchase of Big Ideas as a K-5 math resource.
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay, and then 4.5, curriculum math resource adoption for number corners. I need a motion to approve the purchase of number corners for I think it's not K-5, is it?
It's K3, yes,
Okay,
sorry.
K3 math resources.
I make a motion on that.
I'll second it. Chamberlain?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I'd just like to make a brief
Uh-huh.
comment to thank Randy and Robin for all their work, but also, again, all the teachers who put in the time to pilot these. It's a lot of work, and then provide us the valuable feedback so we can make the best choice we can. So thank you to the curriculum committee, the teachers, and looking forward to seeing the PD on February 8th and April 4th, and get our teachers trained up to use this resource to the best it can be used to help our kids.
Okay, we've got 4.6, agreement with Forecast 5. Mr. Stewart.
So you have in front of you a proposed agreement from a company called Forecast 5 Analytics. And what this software is a data analytics software that the district could use. It's specifically designed for public sector entities. There's a couple different modules we'd be looking at. 5Cast, which is for budget planning software solution. So it'd help analyze our district financial data, help us develop the budget, create multi-year or monthly financial budgets, and also projections, because I know we need to do a lot of look at projections. This would be tied to our current financial system, so the data would be, live data, interaction between the two for reporting. This could also generate items that we then immediately can put out to our website. The second is 5Site, and this is very similar, except it's tied to all the DESI data statewide, so it would enable us to compare ourselves against whatever district or districts we want to with all the data that's there, and they've already got that built and available, and so we could put together all sorts of reports and analytics that would allow the administration and the board to make better and faster decisions on what we need to do. So I'm proposing that the board approve this agreement. This agreement is currently just for the remainder of this fiscal year, so from now through June, we'd be live online with 5Site next week. With 5Cast, it would take less than 30 days.
John, this is for district-wide, not building level, is that correct?
So it would, whatever data we have, we could drill down.
Okay.
But it would be, so there's 2 or 3 licenses for 5Cast and 5 for 5Site, so it's not like a district-wide resource. It would be finance department and a few folks at the central office, yes.
Anybody else? Okay, I need a motion to approve the agreement with Forecast 5 as presented.
Motion Chamberlain?
Second, Smith. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay. 4.7, purchase of business lab workstations. Mr. Stewart.
So we have a proposal here from VIG Solutions for desktop computers that would be used at Seckman High and Fox High in the school business labs. The total cost is $62,524 and is funded by the Missouri Department of Education CTE Base and Performance Grant, which was acquired by Maria Bialik. These machines are going to be purchased through a national purchasing contract, so it is recommended to approve the proposal from VIG Solutions.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, we need a motion to accept the proposal from VIG Solutions to provide 116 Dell Optiplex 5070 SFF desktop computers for $62,524.
I make a motion.
Second, Michael.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay. 5.2, the financial report. Mr. Stewart.
So you have in front of you the financial report and the chart, the familiar chart for the first 6 months of the year. So we're halfway through the year, and our brown line in December is a little north of $30 million. That's the highest it's been in what we're tracking anyway, historically in this chart. It's a little over $6 million higher than we were a year ago. So we, our year is doing well so far. Our revenues are tracking right on. We're about, at 50% through the year. We're just a little under 50% with revenue received, and that will continue to grow as we get some more local taxes in the month of January and a little bit more in February. Our expenditures, and by the way, our revenues are tracking ahead of a year ago. We're plus about $3 million in revenue over a year ago. Our expenditures are also tracking well. We're running below budget, which is what we anticipate. And our expenditures, although they're a little bit higher than what they were last year by $1.2 million, they're, it's tracking below. Our revenues are tracking higher than what our expenditures are, so we're gaining ground there. So, yeah, we're doing well. Any questions on the on the finance report?
No questions? Okay, we're going to move on to 5.2, financial workshop. I would just like to ask if there's anybody in the room that is on the Finance Advisory Committee that this is coming from. Would you just let us know who's, okay, we've got Mr. Frazier back here, Mrs. Chamberlain, Ms. Hargis, somebody else? Oh, Kim is on it, okay. All right, so these are some of the people that John has been meeting with. John, would you just tell us also, just give us a compilation of who this committee is?
So the District Finance Advisory Committee is, currently we have, I think, about 13 members. We have 2 board members. We have several parents from multiple buildings, and we also have 3 teachers, 3 teaching staff, I think, on the committee, and then Dawn and myself, and Dr. Frigo comes when he can, and Kim comes when she can. I have been communicating to grow this committee a little bit with principals, and so I'm getting some recommendations there, and we're hoping to get this a little bit of a bigger committee. Although we don't want, too large a committee, because
And that's, they're getting recommendations, John, just so people know, for parents.
Correct.
Community members.
Correct,
to be
for
part of this.
parents and community members from each of the buildings. Yep. So what you have here, what I'm going to walk through is the majority of the presentation that I gave December 8th at our meeting. This committee meets 4 times a year is the goal. We meet for about an hour each time, and we talk about all sorts of different topics. The main topic that we talked about December 8th was tax levy. So I'm going to walk through that a little bit. So, and for those of you that were at the committee meeting, there's also going to be a few new slides that we've added just for tonight. So the next screen, I want to talk a little bit about the tax levy calendar, because it's not just setting taxes and then people pay taxes. There's a whole year-long rigmarole that we go through. And so on January 1st, that's the date that all real estate and personal property is assessed by the Jefferson County Assessor, or each county assessor. Reassessment occurs every other year in odd years. So 2021, this last, a year ago, was a reassessment year. In March of those odd years, those reassessment years, the county is supposed to give all the taxing entities a preliminary assessed valuation. AV is short for assessed valuation. There was an issue in 2021 with software, and so Jefferson County was not able to provide that preliminary assessed valuation. When we received that preliminary assessed valuation in April, we receive it in March. In April, we are supposed to calculate and submit a non-binding tax rate back to Jefferson County. We did not do that. We didn't have to do that in 2021 because they weren't able to provide us with a preliminary assessed valuation. But what the county does in those years, whenever they get that non-binding tax rate, is they take the preliminary assessed valuations and they take the non-binding tax rates and they throw them together, and they send an informational piece out to all the taxpayers that shows this is what your estimated taxes are going to be come November, December, whenever you get your bills, so people can start planning. Or if they don't agree with what the assessment is on their property, they can protest that, they contest that with, appeal that to the Board of Equalization with the county. So those meetings start up, I think, in June, the appeals with the Board of Equalization. So by late June, we get an updated assessed valuation. Now, it's not a final, but it's updated, and it's before the final Board of Equalization adjustments that are made for any appeals. Then in late August, after all the appeals have been heard, the county provides us with a final assessed valuation. So we receive that in late August, and I work on calculating tax rates. In September, we have our tax rate hearing before the meeting, and the board actually takes action to set what the tax rates are going to be for that year. And then the deadline to file those tax rates with Jefferson County is October 1st. So after the board approves those rates, there's a little bit of paperwork I have to complete, and we get it submitted to Jefferson County. Once we submit those rates, the county has to put those, along with all the fire districts, ambulance districts, the the Jefferson College, water districts, all those various small taxing entities, they all go together and they generate your tax bill that you then get in end of October, beginning of November. And then generally about December, we start receiving our local taxes. And we receive those in chunks between December and February, depending on when they were paid. And just to remind folks, we receive, I think it's about about 47 million, maybe 49 this year, I think, based on our local tax revenues. So that's kind of the calendar that we have to work through with the tax levy. So next page, please. A little bit of history, just so you can see how things have changed over the years. So this is a history of our assessed valuation. There are multiple categories of real estate. So there's residential real estate, commercial real estate, and agricultural real estate. Some counties have to set a different rate for each one of those. We get to combine them all. And then we have personal property. So you can see I've got real estate, personal property, and then what our total assessed valuation is. So you can see from 2013-14 to this current year, we've gone from $853 million of assessed valuation to $1.15 billion of assessed valuation. So it's been an increase. You see the annual increases on there by those categories and then overall. And then just for your reference, the lighter colored lines, those are reassessment years. So for instance, that first line, 21-22, where it went up 11.6% in real estate, that's due to reassessment. Last year in 2021, it went up 1.95%. That's a non-reassessment year. So there's very little growth in non-reassessment years. Next slide, please. This is just a bar graph depiction of the former chart the chart on the former page. So you can see over the years, just the gray line is the total assessed valuation, the blue is the real estate, and orange is personal property. So you can see our assessed valuation, as most assessed valuations are, driven by real estate valuations. And you can see those have grown over the last few years, and in particular this last year took a little bit of a jump. The next page goes on to give us a little history on our tax levy. And so we have our tax levy consists of two main levies. One is an operating levy that we calculate, and then one is the debt service levy that we calculate. The operating levy goes to fund our Fund 1 and Fund 2, basically our operating funds. So that's where the majority of our expenses are for salaries and book purchases and software and all those kinds of things. The debt service levy goes to pay off our debt. That levy, the debt service levy, you can see doesn't change a whole lot. It can change when you, it will change if you do a bond issue that requires a tax increase. But like Prop P that our taxpayers passed 2 years ago was a no tax rate increase bond issue, so it's not projected to increase our tax rate at all. That could be affected if there was a decrease in assessed valuation, causing that levy to go up, but it just organically it's not going to go up due to that. But our operating levy, you can see back in 13-14 was $4, almost $4.32, and now in this current year is $3.86, a little over that. So you see how it's gone down. So your tax revenue comes from two numbers, your assessed valuation and then the tax rate that's applied to it. If your assessed valuation goes up, thanks due to the Hancock Amendment here in the state of Missouri, we're not allowed to get a windfall. So assessed valuations went up over 11% this year. We didn't get an 11% increase in tax revenue because our operating levy had to go down. So you see our operating levy went down 6.18%. So it's not a windfall. And in non-reassessment years, you can see it's really not a windfall because we didn't get a big increase or anything in assessed valuation, but our tax rate still had to roll back. So, you know, over the last several years, our levy has rolled back, I think that's about 46 cents. onto the next page, if you combine those last two together with the tax rate and the assessed valuation, you can see what the revenues are based on those calculations. And I'm going to focus on the first column there, the operating revenue, because as I said before, the debt service levy doesn't change much generally. So we're going to look mainly at the operating revenue, and you can see how it has changed percentage-wise in each of those years as we look at the, as you compare it to the assessed valuation. So even though our assessed valuation went up, I think it was 11.6%, actually it was over that, 11.86% total assessed valuation. In operating revenue, only went up 4.95%. So you see, again, in those lighter colored bars, those are the reassessment years, and that's higher growth, which you would expect because things are being reassessed. In the other years, it's limited due to the Hancock Amendment. So, and I think it would be a good thing to note that in no case can, so whenever we do the calculations, the revenue growth that the school district can attain in any given year is limited by three numbers. The first number is CPI. And so historically, before 2021, for probably the last 30 years, the CPI has been, 3% or less most of the time, and for the last decade has been hovering around 1%, maybe, and some years like 0.1%. So that's the first factor. The second factor would be the actual increase in assessed valuation. So, for instance, this year, our assessed valuation went up by 11.86%, okay? But inflation was, and we'll see what it ended up coming out, but you're hearing 6%, so it'll be no more than that. So if you're looking at those two numbers, well, you're going to be limited to 6%. You're never going to get the 11.86. But due to the Hancock Amendment, the third number is 5%. And so in no year will we ever be able to increase revenue, local tax revenue, by more than 5%. There are some small calculation oddities that go in that may make that number a little higher. It's called new construction. Yeah, so whenever new value comes in, you get to take full advantage of that, and that may make that number a little more than 5%, but it's pretty rare to go above that. So on the next page, you can see, again, it's a graphical depiction of our assessed valuation change, which is the blue line, versus the revenue percentage change, the orange line. And I will tell you that revenue percentage change is the total revenue, not just the operating revenue like I was talking about. But that would be higher than the operating revenue just itself. So you can see graphically there that even though assessed valuation goes up by almost 12%, our revenue is up less than 6 and less than 5 when you look at the operating alone. On to the next page, just so folks understand how a property tax calculation works. So in preparing for this presentation back in December, I looked to find out what the actual average home market value is in the Fox School District, and it's roughly $210,000. So that's residential real estate. The assessment rate for residential real estate is 19%. For commercial real estate, it's 32%. For agricultural real estate, it's 12%, and for personal property, it's 33 1/3%. So you take your home market value, you multiply it by your assessment rate of 19%, and you come up with your assessed valuation of your home of $39,900. Now, tax rates, whenever we calculate those and we talk about those, tax rates are a certain dollar. In our case, for the current year, $4.2526 per $100 of assessed valuation. And so to come to your taxes, you have to take your assessed valuation of $39,900, divide it by 100, and then multiply it by your tax rate of 4.25 and change. And so the Fox taxpayer that has the average home market value of $210,000 is paying a little under $1,700 a year in personal property tax to the Fox School District. Now, your overall bill is going to be higher than that because of all the other taxing entities. However, and the school district will be the largest portion of that, but it's roughly $1,700. So on the next page, I wanted to show what what a penny of tax levy winds up as, how it generates, what kind of tax revenue it generates. So if we take the total assessed valuation of the Fox School District of $1.15 billion, do the same calculation we just did with a home. So you divide it by 100, multiply it by a penny. Pardon me. You come up with a little over $115,000 that 1 penny of tax levy generates. So if you take that over to your average home, 1 penny of tax levy costs a homeowner of the average home market value of $210,000, costs them $4 in a year. So that's just one easy way to think about it. So if you go on to the next page, I get a lot of questions about how do we compare, to Jefferson County and surrounding districts or like districts. And this is going to be hard for you to see at home and in the crowd, I understand, and probably even in your handout there. And that's why I have one printed out on legal size so I can read. But this page compares Jefferson County, and this data all came from DESE. And by the way, thank you for the approval on the Forecast 5, because I'll be able to generate this a lot quicker than I did in Excel for tonight. But I pulled this information out of DESE and reconfigured it just to show Jefferson County, and then I added a few calculations of my own. But there's 11 school districts in Jefferson County, one being a K-8 district. And so I'm going to focus on the colored columns you see. And you see, a little better than halfway down the gray line that shows Fox all the way across there. So with these various metrics here, as far like enrollment, so Fox is the highest in enrollment in the county. And by the way, this data is from 2020, so it's a year old. 10,920. If you go over to that kind of purplish column right in the middle, that's the operating tax rate ceiling. And so if you look at Fox there, we are third. We have the third highest operating tax rate ceiling in the county, the highest one being Crystal City. If you go over to the kind of greenish bluish column there, that the total tax rate, you will see that we are now 8th instead of 3rd. And so the total tax rate includes operating and debt service. So it's looking at the total tax contribution. And so we're at $4.50 there. We're 8th out of 11 in the county, and the highest one there is actually Dunklin at $4.92. So in some of the calculations I did here, if you take you've got your assessed valuation. Sorry, that was given. No surprise, in Jefferson County, we're number 1. At a year ago, we were a little over $1 billion. Those last two columns are calculations that take our assessed valuation per enrolled student to see what kind of a tax generating power there is per student in this district, and the last column is the operating tax revenue per student. So that then applies the operating tax levy to the assessed valuation divided by the enrollment. And you can see in those two metrics, we are down in 6th out of 11 for assessed value per enrolled student, and 7th out of 11 in operating tax revenue per student. So, and number 1 in both those categories is Jefferson R7. On the next slide, we are going to compare ourselves to cohorts of a similar size, and these are the same districts that Dr. Frigo compares us to. So it's statewide, and these districts have a student enrollment of between 9,000 and 15,000 students. And you will see there's, eight districts, including Fox, with a similar enrollment across the state. Again, looking at those same Metrics, enrollment out of the 8, we're 5th. The highest is Blue Springs at 14,500. Operating funds, tax rate ceiling, we are 7th out of 8 at $4.11 and change. The highest is Ferguson Florissant here in St. Louis County with just under $5.10. If you look at the total tax rate, we are 7th out of 8 at a little over $4.50, and the top there is Liberty, which is a school district over on the Kansas City side. If you look at assessed valuation, we're 8th out of 8. So, and the highest is our neighbor just to the north, Melville, at $2 billion. So they have roughly twice the assessed valuation that we have. And then if you look at the assessed valuation per enrolled student, we are 6th out of 8. And again, our neighbor to the north is 1st. And our operating tax revenue per student, we are 7th out of 8. And our neighbor to the north is 1st again. So just to draw the disparity, I mean, Melville, just across the river here, twice the assessed valuation. Although if you look at their tax rate rank, they're last. And I just want to draw this point. If you have a larger assessed valuation, you can deal with a lower tax rate and still generate a sufficient amount of revenue for your students. If you have a lower assessed valuation, it's helpful to have a higher tax rate. If you have a low assessed valuation and you have a low tax rate, that's not a good combination. And so you wind up with, I mean, you look at, and it's just, I'm just sharing our reality. Okay, so, you know, if you look at the operating revenue generated per student, we're at $3,900. And our neighbor to the north is at $8,000. And that, I mean, that's just the facts. That's the way it is. But that's a big gap. That's a big difference.
John, does the Melville tax rate include the special school district tax?
It does not. And thank you for pointing that out, Jim. I have that here to speak about. Because when you talk about St. Louis County school districts, they also, above this rate, special school district in St. Louis County sets its own tax rate. And it, I think at this point, is $1.20 or maybe a little higher than that. And so if you add on top Melville's $3.80, if you had $1.20 there, they're at $5. And so that moves them up to 6th place, and we're 7th at 50 cents lower than that. So, but they don't have to deal with that because that's not their tax rate. That's special school district's tax rate, and all that staff and all those services are paid for by special school district, and those are services that Fox School District we provide in-house with the money that we have. The last cohort I want to show you is similar size and similar economic status. So the free and reduced lunch count is similar to ours. And this narrows it down to 5 districts. And again, in size, we're 3rd. In operating ceiling, we're 4th. Total tax rate, 4th. Assessed valuation, we're 5th. AV per enrolled student, we're 4th. And operating revenue per student, we're 5th. So that's just data and different ways to look at it and compare us to similar entities, either by location in our county or by size or economic status. So that's just kind of where we are with that. So, and those were all new slides that the Financial Advisory Committee did not see. But the next few are ones that they did see. And these are, first of all, I want to be very clear. This is not a recommendation. This is financial projections with assumptions that from the time I put them on the paper a month ago are inaccurate. They just are. They're the best numbers I had at that time, and things will be different. But I'm looking into the future the best I can with reading glasses and contacts, and trying to see trying to guide this board into what our reality is looking like down the road. So I currently have a projection model that I have built that's a humongous Excel spreadsheet. I've shared it with the board before, and in fact, you've seen screens like this a year ago that were similar. So the first line, the first two lines up there are based on what our operating fund balances are going to be on our current budget trajectory. So the first line in the two is the percentage, and the second line is the dollars. Okay, so, and this is, again, just operating funds. So currently, we're projecting at the end of this fiscal year, we will have fund balances of about, $17.9 million, 14.71%. Okay, and that's in yellow because if our fund balances drop below 15%, our board policy is to try to maintain those no lower than 15 to 20%. So if it's below 15%, it's colored yellow. You see, if we don't change anything in the way we operate, and that's what these assumptions are, although it allows for the assumptions are the salary increases based on current salary schedules. It includes increases for insurance at the current rates, a little bit of inflation in there for supplies and materials and the like. And so you see, as that goes out in our current scenario, we're 14.71 at the end of this year. A year from now, we're 9.29. A year after that, we're 1.89, and that's in orange because that's lower than 3%. If your fund balance, your operating fund balances drop below 3%, you're considered financially stressed by the state, and that's one of the reasons you can lose your accreditation, and the state can then come in and take you over. Past that, everything's red because we're negative, and that is not a reality that is allowed by the state. So just looking at a dollar, because it's a nice round number, and it depends. So the next four scenarios there that you see down depend on when that dollar increase would be passed. So if the board were to say put a dollar tax levy increase on the ballot in April, and that's not going to happen because the deadline for that is the 25th of this month, and that's not going to happen. So, but if they were, and our taxpayers were kind enough to pass that, then at the end of this year we would still be at 14.71. The tax levy increase, that dollar, would not take effect for another year because of the assessed valuation calendar and the tax levy calendar that you saw before. So this dollar wouldn't go on until we do the tax rate calculations this coming fall of 2022, but we'd start getting the money December of 2022. And so you see our fund balances come back up above 15% and maintain that way for 4 years. And then they start to decline again into the yellow and orange and red. Each year, so those next three scenarios are just if we delay a year. So if we did a dollar tax levy increase but didn't pass it until fiscal year 22-23, we would never be in green. We'd be in yellow for several years, and then quickly orange and red. If we waited an additional year, we'd only be in yellow for 2 years. And then, so this is really just showing more the value of doing something sooner rather than later, or the consequences of waiting. Now, the next slide.
John, can I just ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
When was our last tax levy?
Our last tax levy increase was in 2004. February 2004 was the election. And that was to increase our levy to $4.47.
Which was an increase of how much?
Of approximately $1.22, $1.2207.
Okay, so let me ask you another question.
Yes, ma'am.
School districts around here, how often do they put a tax levy on their ballots?
Depending on the district and their situation, I would say at least, well, I would say every 5 to 10 years, there's something on the ballot for an operating levy increase. For a levy to last more than 10 years, I would say is an anomaly. But it just depends.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So this set of scenarios is, I'm just looking at what kind of an increase it would take just to keep the district stable or above a 15% fund balance through the year 28-29. And so that puts us out several years before we'd need to consider going back to the taxpayers again.
John, one question.
Sir.
This is total revenue you're talking about, correct? In
This
other
is
words,
tax revenue.
This is just tax revenue. This doesn't include any of the state money or anything like that.
Correct.
So what is the assumption on the state money? Because we got a combination of both state money and local money.
Well, I mean, those are built in to the assumptions, but I mean, this is, well, so our state revenue is not going to increase unless our population increases, our student enrollment increases, or unless the legislature changes something significantly with the formula. Otherwise, my projections built in the spreadsheet do not increase state revenue much.
Okay.
But just, it's looking to get us up to 15% and maintain that through 28-29. And so just by playing around with numbers, if that occurred this year, we'd need $1.30. If we waited a year, we'd need $1.41, and that gets us green in 24-25 out through 28-29. Again, if we waited 3 years, it's going to be, what is that? $1.69. And if we waited till 24-25, which is not a real reality because we'd be negative before that point, or that year anyway. But you'd see that'd be $2.09. And I want to preface all this. These are just projections, and this administration and this board would not allow the negatives to occur. We can't allow those negatives to occur, so there would be some hard decisions and budget reductions that would have to occur before that happened. So then on to the third scenario, and this is just taking it out there further, so keeping us 15% or more out through 30-31, and we're ranging, depending on when it passes, from this year, $1.40 out to 24-25, which again kind of doesn't make any sense because you're negative before you get your levy, but that's $2.08. So you can just see the longer you postpone, the bigger the need becomes. Is basically what that's showing. Any questions?
So
on
because
those?
of the Hancock Amendment,
Yes.
even though people are being taxed more, we cannot collect more.
We are
Because
allowed
we
to
are-
collect a certain amount more.
restricted.
But it's restricted to, well, never more than 5% more.
So
But
even
usually
though-
it's CPI,
So
which
even
is.
though our expenses go up more than 5%,
Correct,
we can never collect more than 5%.
correct.
So that's
And-
why we end up being in the negative.
Correct, and I think, and maybe I'm giving a little too much credit to former legislators, however, I think maybe whenever they came up with calculating tax levies in the Hancock Amendment and that, it's meant to make a public entity like a school district be responsible and have to go back and say, this is what we've done with the money, this is where we're at, now we need to ask for more. And I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just a reality. And I will, to the point that you made there, Judy, so yeah, if we're limited to 5% or CPI, whatever's lowest, or the actual percentage increase. However, we only get that every other year because in non-reassessment years, that's going to be the limiting factor, and it's closer to 0 generally than it is 1% in your increase in assessed valuation, and that's going to be your limiting factor in those years. So really, we get CPI every other year, while our expenses are going up by CPI every year. It's just a reality that we have and that we have to deal with.
So was there any kind of discussion with the committee, with the parents? What did they think was reasonable or?
Well, so we discussed through all this. Folks understand. I think the general climate, correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal and Michelle, but the general climate, and whenever we were discussing it, was that, yeah, we need to do something, but right now is not necessarily the time to do that. But we do, it's not something we can stick our head in the sand about and ignore, because it won't get better. There's not an assessed valuation fairy out there that's gonna, drop a huge
So back when we
complex.
had to establish our tax rate, we actually went backwards.
Our tax rate.
Because, so we
rolled back.
actually, people actually ended up paying less per assessed value or not.
So our tax rate went down. Now, whether they could well pay more taxes
Because
to
they
us
were reassessed.
because of the reassessment.
Right.
So that's the interesting thing. I mean,
But we can't
I hear
get
from
more.
folks that say, well, my taxes went up, you raised the tax rate. Well, no, we rolled the tax rate back.
Right.
But I know folks call the assessor's office, and the assessor's office says, well, we just established the assessed valuation for your home. We don't calculate the tax rate. Well, we can't calculate the tax rate until we get the assessed valuation. So, I mean, literally, and it's just the way it is, you get a lot of, well, it's not my fault, it's their fault. It's not their fault, it's my fault. It's a combination of those two numbers, but we got to have that number to get started. So yeah, they could well, even though our tax rate went down, they could pay more taxes because the assessment of their home went up.
John, the bottom line is that we have to provide an education for our kids here that
Yes.
makes our kids competitive with all the other kids. Now, I can tell you as a school district over the years, we've done a really, really good job of providing a really quality education for a long time, and we did it with a lot less than what most districts are spending on kids. But there is a point of diminishing returns.
Yes.
And we may be approaching that point of diminishing returns. One of the things that I'm curious, what's happened to our per pupil expenditure over the years? Has it stayed the same? Has it increased with the CPI? What's happened with that? In other words, that's the money that we have to spend.
I would have to take a look. I don't have that data with me, Mr. Shalhoub.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Per pupil expenditures over time.
So I kind of look at it as this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that 17 years ago, whatever my little family made as salary income, that's what I'm still living on, raising the same family in today's world 17 years later.
Kind of.
Okay,
Kind of. Because, I mean, we have gotten assessed valuation increases.
right.
Which help. But our tax rate has rolled back over that
And cost
period
has
of time.
gone up.
Yeah, and
Yes.
cost of living has increased by more than what our revenue increases have gone up. And that's the way the system is built.
And I'm glad you understand it.
Any more questions on this before we move on to the next portion of the finance workshop update? Because that's basically my part. I'm going to ask Kim Loomis to come up and discuss about the next couple pages, which are our ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 budget grids. And here's Kim.
If you remember last time, John showed us what our current expenditures were at this point. What Kim's going to share with us tonight is where we've budgeted things through the ESSER funds, how we've allocated the funds throughout the columns. So, Kim?
And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about these grants. The ESSER 2 budget, as you can see there, provides the district with an additional $4 million for specific actions in response to COVID. And so DESE allocates the amount. There's a funding formula that's tied back to Title I, free and reduced, and the district had the opportunity to apply for these funds. When I first was hired, or right before I officially submitted this grant on behalf of the district based on information from the leadership and the needs assessed from across the district. What we said we're going to do with the ESSER $2 was to look at things that the district needed, the students needed in response to COVID. Most of the funds are going for student needs based on online learning, Canvas, technology, moving graduation to a site to facilitate social distancing, and then some HVAC improvements due to air qualities and things like that. This DESE budget grid just shows you how the money has been allocated to meet those specific needs that were indicated and provided to me when I came. Are there any specific questions on ESSER 2? So a lot of ESSER 2 was for the online programs in response when the district had gone remote. And this all ties back to expenses that the district incurred back to March of 20. All right, so ESSER 3, you'll see on this budget grid, brings the district an additional almost $9 million, just short of $9 million. Part of this grant had the requirement to survey stakeholders. And so we issued a survey out to the community through the district website, robocalls, asking for responses. We got almost 2,000 responses for how this money should be allocated. The one caveat on this grant for approval was 20% minimum has to go for addressing learning loss, specific activities across the district to address high needs remediation, social emotional learning, services for kids, technology. The community indicated that student needs, virtual learning, technology, and then building air quality were the highest three priorities. So this grant, there are 15 different buckets that DESE has indicated that the district had to pay attention to. And if you remember from our prior workshop, on my grid where things were extremely small, and let me see what I did with that. We said we were going to spend 1% for after-school activities, 1% for extended day programs, 1% at least for extended year programs like Saturday special programs, tutoring, and then special activities that involved families, learning activities, 1% or more for tutoring services, and then summer enrichment, 1% summer enrichment, 1% at least for mental health, 2% for SEL programs that involve not only students and staff but also families, 20% on virtual learning and online programs, technology, 1% on cleaning supplies, 12% on additional staffing to include double dosing in math and ELA to address learning loss, 1% on social distancing and barriers, 1% on service MOUs for additional cleaning in response to COVID, and then it ended up with the HVAC, air controls, air return, that was almost 59% of this budget. So that's why you'll see that $5 million in the facilities and capital. And this plan was submitted to DESE in August. We gained full approval just mid or late November. And so we have things in place, plans in place. We have contact tracers. We have some tutoring programs in place now. And again, these are reimbursable funds. So this is the district's allocation. Any specific questions for me on ESSER 3? These funds are available to the district through September of 2024.
I have a question about the $5 million for facilities acquisition and construction services. Is this going to be new installations of HVAC?
So some of those programs have already been approved by the board. And again, these are reimbursable. So some of those air return HVAC units can be paid out of these funds.
So if you'll remember, we've got the plan that shows all the different HVAC that's going to occur over a period of, I think it's 5 years. So a lot of that is here. Some of them, as Kim mentioned, some have been approved. So like the work that occurred at Fox Elementary and at Seckman High School, part of that work we can get reimbursed through this on. Okay, so yeah, some of it's already done. We just have to apply for reimbursement, and we'll get that money back. The rest of it, and this is a fluid plan, because as for instance, we've got interventionists that we're trying to hire, and we're having trouble hiring. And so some of those funds are allocated for multiple years here. Well, that time frame is getting shorter, so some of those funds will have to be reallocated elsewhere. If we need to pull some of the money out of facilities for the HVAC and put it for, some equipment for, technology or whatever, we can do that. We have to send an amendment to DESE, but we can, they approve it, and then we can do that. Which also brings me, JP, if you want to go to the last slide. I showed this to you all before, just so you can see what we've been allocated for ESSER 1, 2, and 3, what we've actually expended. So we've expended everything in ESSER 1 except for $50. ESSER 2, we've only expended, to this point, $424,000. We still have $3.6 million that we can use, and we have a plan to do that. One thing I want to say about ESSER 3, so we've already expended $353,000 of that. That money has not been appropriated yet by our legislature. So they have to, there's a supplemental budget request that is going to the legislature that they have to approve by March the 24th, I think is the date.
March 24th, or we lose it.
Yeah, if they don't approve that supplemental budget, or that supplemental budget request, that money goes back. So you may look at this and go, you got $9 million and you haven't spent much of it. But at this point, I'm glad we haven't, because
Go back to where?
go back to the federal government.
And redistribute it to other states.
So at this point, I'm glad. I mean, I think that our legislature will approve, and I'm hopeful that they will approve this budget supplement. But if by some reason they don't, we're not out $9 million because we wouldn't get reimbursed.
So is
for
there
it.
something we can do to prod them on?
You could contact your local
Okay,
legislator.
so could we please receive an email saying some wording of what this is called and how we could
Certainly.
possibly forward that on, contact our Congress? And, maybe it's even something that our teachers and our parents need to let our senators and representatives know that they need to release this money.
Is there any resistance to releasing the money from the legislature?
I think currently it's a political football.
So they're playing politics with our kids?
Well, potentially. Now, the session just started a week ago, but there's, nothing is guaranteed when it comes to the legislature. So,
And our MASA groups, our MSBA groups, all those groups are communicating and advocating for that as well.
Well, if we could have that information to
Absolutely.
contact them, we would.
we'll get something to you.
Good idea, Judy.
Any additional questions?
When Mr. Stewart said that it was a fluid document, I was thinking we have a lot of people that are retiring. So I'm guessing, if my memory is correct, that those funds could not be used to hire subs if we couldn't get subs. But if, like, we knew people were hiring and we hired people to fill those spots and started them early and had them train with the people would that be something that would be allowable so that they could kind of sub with?
We'd have to
You know what
dig
I'm
into
saying?
that and see.
Because, if you know people are retiring, you could go ahead and hire for those positions. Like, a lot of times there's people that graduate in December, or they're working on their certification and.
So you're wanting to pay double people?
No, I meant, they could be hired as teachers rather than subs, but they could function as subs and kind of train with the people that you know what I'm saying? So you could hire them as additional staff to help with the learning loss.
So both of these ESSER 2 and 3 If you wanted to hire additional staff, it would have to be in a remediation or
Okay,
for a
like their
specific
math-
academic
okay.
program, where they could, in a sense, job shadow, but their duty would be to double dose.
Right. But I meant, so if.
These
people-
funds could be used for that.
So our interventionists, are they being paid on the regular salary scale or at a lesser because they're not full-time?
The interventionists are on the regular
And-
salary scale, on the teacher salary scale, yes.
And you can't
Okay.
find any.
Well,
We're having trouble.
there's a
We found a
rush
few.
across the country to try and find additional teachers and tutors for remediation, specifically because there are other districts that have these funds as well, that are trying to do additional programs and find additional staff.
So I can just speak about at the secondary level. We actually just held interviews last week, but I'm looking to fill 3 math interventionists and 3 ELA. I didn't even have enough apply to interview. I didn't even have enough to fill 3 math. I had some great applicants, but part of the problem is the ones that are applying are current teachers somewhere else and they're under contract. And for them to come to us, they're going to pay, I mean, some of them were telling me they're going to have to pay $4,000 or $5,000 to get out of their contract. Well, they're not going to do that. So it's, I mean, right now we have those positions ready to be hired, but we don't have, it's difficult. Or, so I need 3 ELA. Well, if I have 1 candidate, I can't, how do I split 1 ELA person over 6 secondary schools? Like it's a difficult situation right now just because we don't have the applicants applying.
Randy, Dr. Gilman, did you have a little more
Yeah, we had
luck?
a little bit better luck, and I think we were hiring 5, and we got 4 placed already. So we're in a little better shape on that. We got lucky with some December graduates.
And they're shared between buildings, correct?
Correct.
So because of all of this, could it be classified as a shortage, and could teachers who have retired come back on to work and still draw their retirement and be hired in these positions?
I believe it's a limited hour basis.
Didn't we figure out the time on that? And we were still going to be, we have what, 90 days of school
Yeah,
left?
it'd be over their 550.
They would be over their 550 still at this point.
So even though there's a teacher shortage, they couldn't
So-
go over those numbers?
So I believe DESI's looking at that because of the crisis. I mean, there is a major shortage, not just here, it's in every state.
Yeah, I thought so too.
But I think those are certain positions.
Subjects,
Not an interventionist per se.
right, physics and
Yeah.
a couple other
Well, the other thing I
higher-
want to
higher
mention,
level.
oh, sorry, Kim, I didn't mean to talk over you. Another thing I want to mention is some of the applicants we have are TAs in our district. So the problem is we have about 7 TA positions in our district that we haven't been able to fill. So if I pull somebody who wants to be an interventionist, then I'm pulling that person away from other students. Like it's like, what do I can't, it's difficult.
Anything addition?
Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Well done.
All right, we have 6.1, payment of bills, Group A. Mr. Stewart.
So you have in front of you the Group A bills presented for your review and approval, and it is recommended to approve them as presented.
Motion?
Vicki?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got some abstaining to do, so let's just vote around the circle.
Yes.
I approve, but I abstain from line item 8012.
I approve, but I abstain from line item 7950.
I approve, but I abstain from line 8138.
I approve, but I abstain from line item 7971. And for those people who are wondering, it was for a workshop that we attended in Kansas City.
I approve, but I abstain from line item 7949.
I approve. I did attend the workshop, but I didn't, I rode with people.
Carol?
Yes, I approve.
Okay, thank you. Are you good? All right. 6.2, change order approval, Mr. Stewart.
So you have in front of you change orders number 6 through 11 that encompass multiple adjustments at Antonia Elementary School for the project that happened over the summer and finally got wrapped up in October and early November. And these are change orders from IFS, who is the contractor, the general contractor on the job. So each of these was below $5,000, so I have already approved them per policy FEF-1, and they are now presented to the board for their approval.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, I need a motion to approve change orders 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 from IFS for Antonia Elementary School as presented.
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 7.1, third reading and adoption of policy GDBDA. Dr. Brocht.
We are requesting the board's approval for a third reading and adoption of this policy. It has been revised since our last meeting to reflect the changes that were requested.
Make a motion to approve the policy as presented, GDBDA.
I second
I
that.
second.
Oh, go ahead and take care of.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone
Yes.
opposed? Okay, 8.0, consent agenda. Dr. Brocht.
We're requesting approval for all attached hires, stipends, modifications, and separations.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 8.2 through 8.7 as presented.
Make a
Judy?
motion.
I make a motion. Did somebody make that motion?
No.
I didn't hear it. Okay, I'd just like to make a comment. The substitute hires, I was very happy to see that we have 3 retired teachers that are going to come back and help our kids get back on track and encourage other retirees to sign up for subs. It's very important, and our kids like to see familiar faces. So I appreciate Alice Minnie, Chris Keisker, and Christine Blake.
Thanks, Carol. Did we vote?
No.
Oh, I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.